And everything else that's required for us to live and survive, it's all provided in abundance. It's there. It's there. Open your eyes. It's in everything. A nut that falls from the tree, it's a whole nother tree of thousands of nuts in that one nut. It's in every single thing. Abundance is screaming at us in nature, in creation, and we pay no attention to it. Within every seed is life. It's a remarkable thing. Hey, welcome back to Proving Proverbs. I'm Brad Casper, and if you're new here, this is where we read the text, absorb the knowledge, display the wisdom, and reap the blessings, because that's what we're promised by God, that by implementing these things into our life and making them a part of our way of life, that we will ultimately walk into blessings. And I am a big believer in this. And so, thus, proving Proverbs. And that's what we're setting out to do here, to show that by keeping the words of this book, that it will ultimately lead to blessings. And, you know, the book of Proverbs, there's a very common theme here that weaves its way through the entire book, but, especially here in this chapter and the previous ones covered on this channel, there's this common thread of a display of contrast between, righteousness and wickedness, and wisdom versus folly. And, it's just displaying the contrast, the stark contrast between these two paths in life. Um, and I think it's interesting because there is no middle ground here. It's one or the other. If you're on this path, well, then by default, you're not on that path, right? And if you're not on that path, well, by default, then you are on this path. And so I think that's a very interesting thought, because it would appear that there is no middle ground here, that you're either walking in the way of righteousness or you are walking in the way of wickedness. And so, yeah, just an interesting thought. But anyway, being that that is the main, um, being that that is the main topic here from week to week, I thought that we would kind of get off track a little bit here this morning and talk about something a little different. But I still, after reading chapter 13, saw how it did, tie in. Um, but here where I'm at, spring has officially sprung, and it's been much anticipated, as I'm sure it is for many of you. And, after a long, cold, dark winter, those warmer days and longer days, they are much anticipated. And this morning, as I was sitting outside with my dog, Samson, I was listening to the birds sing their songs, and I was watching the robins as they went about on the ground, getting their morning worms. And as I watch them, I'm not sure if you ever really observe them closely, but it's pretty remarkable, how it works, because they're essentially just like walking across the grass, waiting until they feel a vibration in their feet of a worm that's in the ground underneath them. And I mean, with precision, almost every time, with one peck of the beak, they're pulling out a worm. And I as I sat and watched them do this over and over and over again, it got me thinking about an area of scripture that's very interesting And I think that it's taken for granted a lot and overlooked today. And that's the area where Yeshua, Jesus, is talking to those who are questioning him about, being concerned for, food and clothing and just being anxious and worried and things like this over um, the things that are required to survive in this life. And he says something very interesting to them, and he calls their attention to nature. And he says, look at these birds, how, they don't worry about where their next meal's going to come from. Yet they never go hungry. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing here, but the point he's making is that they don't worry about where their next meal is coming from, and everything they need is provided to them within the environment that they find themselves. It's all there. And not only is it just there, but it's there in abundance. I mean, they have more than enough to survive. And the point he's making to the disciples here is that you don't have to be worried with these types of things. You don't have to be concerned about these types of things when it comes to necessity, you know. And and he also, in regards to the clothing, he says, look at how God has clothed them with beauty unlike anything, even the garments in the richness of the wardrobe of Solomon cannot compare in splendor to, these creatures that are found in creation. How much more, he says, if God has done these things for these animals in nature, how much more do you think he has done these things for you? And I just think that goes over many of our heads and we just take that for granted. But what he's saying here is profound. Because once I looked over to my garden, I'm watching these birds, I'm watching the birds get their worms, and it calls this scripture into mind. And then I look over to my garden, I start thinking about, the tomato plant, how I can pull one tomato off of that plant. And when I cut into that tomato, there is 100 seeds there, which means next year that is 100 more plants. So within that one tomato, which that plant will put off 20 or 30 tomatoes, and inside each one of them is 100 more plants. Think of the compounding nature of how that is and what that's telling us. And it's that way when you cut into a cucumber. It's that way when you cut into a watermelon. It's that way when you cut into a pumpkin. It's that way when you cut into a squash. It's that way when you cut into a zucchini, a green bean. Everything screams abundance. It screams how God has already provided all that you could ever need. If we can only open our eyes to see it. And it's a shame many of us don't. Because we associate these things with the material world. Everything is associated with the material world instead of the natural world where we should be looking. Because it's true, all of these things have been provided to us in abundance. And this isn't a Joel Osteen type of message that I'm bringing you here. Just the contrary. Because what I'm talking about isn't private jets and mansions and all the cash you could ever need. What I'm talking about is the abundance that's found in nature, in the necessities, in the things that are required to survive. There is plenty, more than you could ever need. And that's the God that we serve. That's Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahuwah, whatever you want to call him, the Most High that sits on the throne, the creator of all these things. That's his nature. That's his love that we see in all of these things. It's clearly there, but we don't see it because we're always chasing after the material in this life. And we associate these blessings with the material things. And that's not to say that you can't be blessed with material wealth in this life, but it should not be our pursuit. It should not be our pursuit, but rather a byproduct of our pursuit, which is righteousness, which is chasing after these character traits of virtue and honor and truth in these things. We make these things our pursuit and we let those things become a byproduct of those pursuits. And everything else that's required for us to live and survive, it's all provided in abundance. It's there. It's there. Open your eyes. It's in everything. A nut that falls from the tree, it's a whole nother tree of thousands of nuts in that one nut. It's in every single thing. Abundance is screaming at us in nature, in creation, and we pay no attention to it. Within every seed is life. It's a remarkable thing that we miss out so much because we're always chasing after this synthetic world that we're in instead of the beauty that's in the authentic, organic, natural world that has been given to us that we shamefully wreck in many ways. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting observation this morning. It really, touched me this morning as I began to think about these things because I can see where we don't rely enough on the one who has provided it all for us. And if we did, if we leaned into that, well, that's what I'm talking about here with this. That's the blessings that I'm talking about. And that's what Proving Proverbs is all about. And so, chapter 13 starts off saying, "A wise son loves discipline. A mocker will not listen to reproof. When a man has good things to eat, it is the fruit of his own words. But the appetite of the treacherous feeds on violence. He keeps his life who guards his mouth. He who talks too much is lost. The idler yearns, but there is no food for him. Hard workers get their fill. The virtuous man hates lying words, but the wicked man slanders and defames. Virtue preserves the man of honest life. Wickedness proves the ruin of the sinner. There are some who, on nothing, pretend to be rich. Some, with great wealth, pretend to be poor. A man's wealth may ransom his life, but the poor man sees no threat. The light of virtuous men burns bright. The lamp of the wicked goes out. Insolence breeds disputes. With the humble is found wisdom. A sudden fortune will dwindle away. He grows rich who accumulates little by little. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Desire fulfilled is a tree of life. He who despises the word will destroy himself. He who respects the commandments will be safe. The wise man's teaching is a life-giving fountain for eluding the snares of death. Intelligent prudence secures favor. The way of the treacherous is hard. Every man of discretion acts by the light of knowledge. The fool parades his folly. A malicious messenger means a fall into misfortune. A trusty envoy heals. For the man who rejects discipline, poverty and disgrace. For the man who accepts correction, honor. Desire fulfilled is sweet to the soul. Fools are loth to turn from evil. Make the wise your companions, and you grow wise yourself. Make fools your friends, and suffer for it. Misfortune dogs the sinner. Good fortune rewards the virtuous. The good man bequeath his heritage to his children's children. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the virtuous. The poor man's fallow yields food in plenty. There are some who perish when justice fails. The man who fails to use the stick hates his son. The man who is free with correction loves him. The virtuous man eats to his heart's content. The belly of the wicked goes empty. Uh, yeah, some very, very powerful verses found in that chapter. And I feel like, when you read it and you just think about, some of what we discussed earlier with the pursuits of worldly things and the way that looks in the world, because unfortunately, that's what the chase is for many. And, I think we can see that in the end result, which is, the world that we are currently witnessing. And, there's many, many things here to be taken from this, but, you know, I think it's interesting here at the end how it's talking about, disciplining your children. And I think that that's also a big part of what we're seeing today because of a lack of discipline and a change in the way the family unit is run. Because the reality is the family dynamics and the family unit has taken a big hit, in the last few decades by cultural shifts and changes socially. And these things have led to a lot of different problems in the arena of parenting and what that looks like. And when we're talking about correction and discipline and a lack thereof, when those children grow up and become adults in the society, a depraved society, a lot of times is what you will see. And I feel like that's where we clearly are. And so, just like, a young plant sprouts up and grows either into a flourishing variety of whatever it is versus something that was never nurtured and watered and provided, nutrients so that it could thrive instead of just survive, that plant probably looks a lot different. And it's the same with these kids. A lack of attention and discipline, the result of that can be catastrophic when they become adults. And when that happens collectively, which is what I believe we can see in society today, the world can tend to be an ugly place. So, I think these are profound words. We've gotten away from this in society. And, a big part of that is because the systems that are in place, they have threatened many in ways that you feel like you're not even allowed to discipline your kids anymore. You feel like if you do, you may have CYS pounding on your door, for correcting your child. And that's not good at all. But, for many, that's how they feel. They feel like they've lost control over correcting their children. And if they were to, you know, use the stick on their son, well, all that needs to happen there is the school to find out about it and to contact a CYS employee. And next thing you know, they're pounding on your door, And so, when the state takes away your ability to discipline your children, again, I just think it leads to catastrophic results and they will compound and pile up in society. And then, in many ways, that's what causes it to look just like this, what we see out there. And so, yeah, I mean, you could go down through each one of these verses and apply this to areas of life, and you will see that These words are clearly words of wisdom. And that's the beauty of the book of Proverbs. It's this way. Every word, every verse, every chapter, they hold weight, and you can just, the truth that's within them resonates within your spirit, and that's how you know that it's truth. Anyway, this one's getting a little long. Sorry about that. But if this video has touched you, please like it. It helps kick it out to more and more people. I would love to hear from you. Please comment on it. Let me know your thoughts. What's your favorite verse here? Where are you at in your walk? And if you haven't yet, go back and check out some of the previous content. Get caught up with us here. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. And until next week on Proving Proverbs, I'm Casper. And until then, we're out.